Okay, well, good afternoon, everyone. Welcome. My name's Laura Wilkins. I am Engagement and Outreach Coordinator with the Floyd County Library and the Carnegie Center for Art and History. And we're so glad to have such a large audience today for our virtual Jurors Talk for our Form Not Function Quilt Art at the Carnegie exhibition. A quick word about this exhibition. It is an annual exhibition. This is our 17th year of this exhibit, and we are so pleased with the entries we received this year. This was our largest year. We received 358 entries from over 150 artists from across the United States. And of those 358 entries, our exhibition has 23 works. And of course, our wonderful jurors, Denise Furnish, Valerie Goodwin, and Dan Olfe, had the mighty task of jurying online through 2 rounds to get that 358 number down to 23 works. And basically how that works is after round 1, we take basically the top averages and those are accepted. And then after round 2, we take those averages and we go from the top and we allow as many in to the exhibition, until we run out of linear wall space. So we try to include as many artists as possible. And I was pleased this year. There were some names that were less familiar to me. So of course we like to include as many artists as possible each year. So with that, I would also like to welcome many of our exhibiting artists this year. And of course, some of you I have even met at our opening reception on May 14th. We were so pleased. That was really our first, almost back to normal opening since the pandemic. So since the pandemic began. So we were so pleased to be able to do that and to welcome some of our exhibiting artists this year. So with that, it's my great pleasure to introduce Denise Furnish, Valerie Goodwin, and Dan Olfe, who were our Form Not Function jurors this year. So to begin, if we'll start with Denise, and then go to Valerie, and then go to Dan. So Denise, if you would just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, I'm Denise. I'm not a quilter, but I've been real involved with quilts for over 40 years. I did some quilt restoration with the Kentucky Quilt Project, and then I started taking service design classes at the Louisville School of Art and started dyeing old quilts. And as a statement about women's visibility in the arts, I want to present these quilts in a situation like an art gallery or an art museum. So through the years, my work has developed. I no longer dye the quilts. I now use just acrylic medium and acrylic paint. And really my work is really about quilts and about their names, their history, their making, their use, their destruction. And then on top of that, I add my own, like the quilts related, how it relates to the bed, or how it relates to the wearing out surface relates to aging and certain things like that. So that's what I do.
Great.
I'm going to have a show at the National Quilt Museum in Paducah in October.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah.
Excellent. Congratulations. Okay, so Valerie, if you would tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Sure. I live in Tallahassee, Florida, and I recently retired from teaching architecture back in August. And I came to quilting by way of architecture quite by chance. I read an article about how a professor had her students study quilt blocks that evolved into spaces, which evolved into three-dimensional explorations, which then finally became a quilt museum. And so that started me on my journey to want to explore what I could do with this medium in terms of incorporating some of the training and the interests that I have that relate to architecture. And I started working at the beginning using traditional quilt making techniques, and that didn't quite work for me. And then that kind of evolved with me adding mixed media, and then kind of getting more technological, adding laser cutter technology into my work. And my work evolved from trying to do something that was clearly architectural to looking at patterns and aerial views and creating quilts that were of real or imaginary places. And now I'm doing sort of cartographic collages using this laser cutting technology that I've become enamored of. And I was in Quilt National this year.
Oh
and
my
I
gosh.
won the Japanese prize. I'm proud to say
Oh
that.
my gosh.
Mhm.
That's great. Congratulations. Thank you, Valerie.
Mhm.
Okay, Dan, if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, please.
Okay, my name is Dan Olfie. I started quilting in 1997 after we had finished building a house up in the mountains in San Diego County. It was the first designed by my architect son. And we need to put some things on the wall, so we commissioned a quilt by an artist friend. And after that, I told my wife I wanted to buy some Navajo rugs. She said, we can't afford it. So I started quilting. And I first started by, because of my technical background, started making designs on the computer. I started by piecing quilts and creating certain piece patterns on AutoCAD. And then I found that I couldn't get it as much detail as I wanted. So I started painting whole cloth quilts. And then, well, maybe 15 or more years ago, I decided I could design entirely on the computer and have it printed at one of these banner companies, which I've done ever since. So I am interested in a variety of things. Sometimes I use my photographs and use Photoshop to make a collage of them. But lately I've gone back to 3D modeling programs and creating scenes that I render and print and then quilt. So it has kept me busy in my retirement and hasn't brought in any real money, but it's lots of fun.
Yes.
Great. All right. Well, thank you, Dan. And I apologize. I did not pronounce your last name correctly earlier. So it's Olfie. Okay.
We don't know how to pronounce it correctly. It's a German name and they pronounce it differently.
Oh, okay. Great. Well, thank you. Thank you so much. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I do have just a PDF of the accepted works that I'll have up during our conversation. So if there are, of course, any particular works that our jurors would like to discuss or reference, just let me know and I'll flip right to it. So give me one moment to do that. All right. right, here we go. So I do have some discussion questions that we're going to begin our conversation with. And of course, we'll have time at the end for questions, but of course, if some of our artists are with us and we're discussing your piece, we would love to hear from you as well. So so feel free to jump in with any comments, and of course that goes for our audience as well. We want this to be more of a conversation than really a formal presentation. Okay, all right. So the first question for our jurors: if you have served as a juror before, how did your experience jurying form not function compare to other jurying experiences you have had?
Is that being thrown to anybody in particular, or can we just jump in and?
Well, that's actually for our jurors to begin with. So we'll hear from Denise and Dan and Valerie first, please.
Okay.
I guess that's me. I haven't had a whole lot of experience, never anything this large, and never using a computer program. So, I'm not a great one to say, but I think it's really difficult to judge people's artwork. I just want to say that there's so many really good pieces that you have to pass up.
Mm-hmm. Okay, Valerie or Dan, any thoughts?
Well, this is one I can pass on since this is the first time I've been a juror.
That's right, I remember, yes.
For the Visions Museum.
Well, I've been a juror a few times, several times, I guess. This year was the first time that I juried 3 shows this year, and they were all virtual, which is a different experience. Going and talking face to face with the other jurors, and really, getting to have that eyeball to eyeball conversation. So, this year overall was different. I would say that as an architectural professor, my job is to jury work. We have what's called a critique at the end of every project. And so while we're not there to select work, the jurying process is there to educate the students. And so I bring kind of a different perspective to the process. And I enjoy both.
Okay, great. Thank you. And it sounded like we had an audience comment. So whoever that was, if you wanted to share, please go ahead. Or maybe we didn't. Okay, well, great. Well, thank you all. Okay, so our next question for our jurors: how did your own unique practice as a fiber artist help with jurying form, not function? Or someone who uses fiber in their creative process. Denise, I just realized when I read that.
My experience, I did spend a lot of time studying surface design and experimenting with surface design techniques over the years. So I think that helps to understand the processes. I think that helped a lot. And then just experience and education in art and art history and composition, and the formal aspects of art, and then in the conceptual aspect of art and how important that is today. So I think all those things inform what I do. And that's maybe more in my head than in what I do, but
okay, great. Thank you. Okay, Valerie, how about you?
I would say that the jurying process for me is a way to reflect on my own work and to kind of compare and contrast what I see that is strong in theirs and kind of, question myself. And so that's one thing I get out of it in terms of my own practice. It's probably not the way you wanted me to approach answering the question, but that was the main thing that I thought of.
Okay, great. All right, Dan.
Okay, for me, there are a couple things. One is on the detailed image, you can see pretty well how they constructed the work and the quality of the craftsmanship. But maybe more importantly, I value the idea behind the creation, and having seen many quilts and quilt shows, I know what looks original to me. And if it's somebody's work I know, I can see whether they're progressing from what they've done before or not. So I think it helps to have a background in quilting.
Mhm.
Okay, great. Thank you. Okay, any audience questions or comments at the moment? No? Okay. All right, so moving on, of the works accepted into this year's Form Not Function exhibition, are there any that were especially memorable to you during the jurying process?
Well, this piece that you have up here on the screen, Mary Alexander's Growth number 3, I thought was one of the nicest pieces in the show. I loved it. And the funny thing is, I normally sort of am impressed by the scale, the large scale of quilts and how they seem to belong on museum walls because of the scale of them. And so when a piece is smaller, I feel like it really has to be subtly very strong. And I just really like this piece. I like the fact that she has combined her early work with where she is now, and it works so well together. Her current technique is really lovely. There's so much I like about this little gem of a piece that that's about it for me.
Great, thank you. And then to our jurors, would it be helpful if I just kind of went through all of the accepted works and then you can discuss as you can stop me and you can discuss as we go through, or how would you like to just talk and then I can flip to whatever you would like me to? What sounds good?
I prefer that you go through all
like what you're doing now.
Oh, sorry, what was that, Valerie?
I said I don't mind what you're doing now, but
okay, great.
I can go either way.
Okay, thank you. All right. Well, Denise, did you have any other comments at the moment?
About other pieces in the show, or just?
Oh, sure. Yes, about any other pieces that especially stood out to you during the jurying process.
Well, let's see. I like the I like just the uniqueness of in the relevance of the mask.
Oh, yes. Okay. Oh, there we go. Yes.
Yeah. Beak mask. I like the humor of it. I like again the relevance of it. I like seeing quilting done in 3 dimensions.
Yes,
And also sort of the idea of zipping. We were also contained, and the zipping is sort of contained, and it also refers to sewing. And even though it's a little piece, and I just again liked it.
I was curious as to how you displayed this, Laura.
Well, we have it on a styrofoam head on a that's nailed down to a pedestal.
Okay.
So, and then we use a little bit of white paint to cover where the nails went in, just because the mask is a little heavy, so we really had to anchor the head form onto the pedestal. Thank you for asking. Let's see, we do have something in the chat. So several quilts were similar to previous years, some same artists. What made those similar ones so special? Okay, well, I will go ahead and pose that to the jurors, and then Dan will go to you next. So yes, for those artists that have been accepted, multiple years, and if our jurors are, familiar with those works, because again, we have 3 different jurors each year. So our jurors may not necessarily have seen previous years of Form Not Function. Of course, Denise, as our local juror here in Louisville, Kentucky, she may have, and I'm not sure. I think, Valerie, have you been to visit the exhibition before, the Form Not Function?
I have not, no.
Okay. So this is a good question from Mary Fay, but our jurors may not necessarily have knowledge of previous year's exhibits. So, I will open that question up to Denise and Valerie and Dan. And again, this question was, several quilts were similar to previous years, some same artists. What made those similar ones so special?
It's kind of hard to answer that question, basically because of what you just said. It's a good
Right.
question.
Right. Yes. Well, I guess I can speak, like I said, I can speak to the fact that, we do have 3 different jurors each year. So of course, each year, their own individual experience and views and expertise with the work they're jurying, will inform their choices. So, one year's exhibition, could be, quite different from the previous year's exhibition. So I am able to speak to that. And it sounded like we had another comment. This is one of the pitfalls of Zoom sometimes. Did we have another comment? It sounded like maybe.
Yes, I would like to comment.
Oh, yes. Thank you, Dan, please.
Since this is my first time during a specific show, I was hoping for lots of new quilters, works I haven't seen. And I was confronted with many very good works from artists that I've seen in various exhibits. And the way I handled that was just about always they submit 3 images. And so I try to pick the one that's maybe slightly divergent from their previous work. And I rationalized it by saying, well, if I were judging a painting show and Mark Rothko submitted, I wouldn't say not another fuzzy rectangle. It would be good enough. Each one of his is special. So, and I think that's true with the artists who exhibit many times and whose work you're familiar with. Okay,
great, thank you. Okay, well, we'll get back to our original question. We'll ask you, Valerie, of the accepted works, are there any that particularly stood out to you during the jurying process?
Can we look at, and I hope I'm pronouncing it right, Gel Skyscraper?
Oh, yes, Clara Narty. I actually had to look up how to pronounce that.
I just did right before we came on.
Gotcha, yes. Sorry. There we go.
Yeah. I mean, when I look at a work, the first thing that that catches me is the aesthetic quality. What is it, how does it impact me visually? And so for this one, it's a very, very strong graphic. I looked at the detail and I thought that the use of the thread work was really masterful. And then, I was excited to want to read the artist statement. And so when I read the artist statement, I was impressed by the level of thought that went into creating this work and how this artist refers to her culture and how she had done some research on it, and how, when you see a vision, an image like this, I think sometimes if you can, you kind of want to interpret it literally. But I like the way that this was interpreted in such a way that, for me, it sort of reminds me a little bit of pop art. I just like the way that the person distilled everything down to its basic shapes, and the composition is very impactful. The colors really work well together, and so this is one of the stronger pieces that I saw on the show that I wanted to mention.
Okay, great. Thank you, Valerie. Okay, so Dan, were there any particular works that stood out to you when you were, any of the accepted works that particularly stood out to you as you were during the exhibition?
Well, certainly the mask was the one that stood out for me, but
Yes.
also a couple quilts, say maybe go the one by Darren Redman.
Oh, yes, of course.
Okay.
There we go.
I can't intellectually justify my selection here, but when I came to this one and one or two others, just the colors, the saturated color combinations and so on just made me smile. And so if this were in the museum, I would go to it first so I could enjoy myself for a while.
Mhm.
So that's the way I approach some of it, just from a gut feeling, what gives me pleasure looking at it. So it's
Okay.
very bold to bring those saturated colors together. So that's all I have to say.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I had another one, Laura.
Oh, yes, please,
If
Valerie.
Dan is done. Dan, are you done?
Yes, I am.
Okay. It was the one by Jane Gaskins.
Okay, all right, we will pop to Jane's. There you go.
I mean, I was really struck by the unique approach to presenting the work. I've never seen anything quite like that. I'm familiar with Jane's work, and it's very innovative. And I thought that this was an interesting evolution of some of the early work that she had done that's more dimensional. And I like the fact that it kind of has an old-fashioned appeal, but then there's it looks like she's using I don't know, computer discs of some type. So I just like the combination of the two, and I like the fact that it works together as a whole, and then there's really something that draws you in to look at each of the separate images that she's created.
Okay, great. Thank you. Now, I know we have some of our accepted artists with us on our Zoom event today. So, so if any of the artists, that we just looked at, if you have any comments or anything you would like to add, please feel free. Okay, now a follow-up question for our jurors. Are there works that were not accepted that were especially memorable to you during the jurying process? So we'll start with Denise, because I know when Denise came to judge the awards, I know there were a couple that you mentioned to me, Denise, that did not get accepted into the exhibition.
Oh. Well, there was one a more traditional quilt by Valerie Mazur Flanagan. She had 3 entries called Up the Rabbit Hole 1, 2, and 3, and they were very, very strong. Dynamic design, color and quilting, but they were all 3 very similar. And anyway, I thought they were all very good, but none of those made it in. But the one that struck me the most was a piece by Patty Hawkins. it was called We Could All Be Eating Lobster on the Titanic.
Mhm.
It was a, I like the big, strong, large graphic quality, color and presence. But it's also very timely and relevant, and I'd say art with a capital A. And some of you all probably don't know this, but right across the river from the Carnegie Museum in Louisville, Kentucky, is where Breonna Taylor was murdered. And along with the murder of George Floyd last year in Minneapolis, there was a movement that fueled the demand for changes in the way people of color are treated by the police. And this was a big deal in our area. There were, our downtown was shut down. It was very traumatic. And the Speed Museum in Louisville even organized. It was one of the first times a large museum has been able to organize a show in 1 year to honor Breonna Taylor. And this piece has a large image of Breonna Taylor on it. And I just would like to read Patty Hawkins' artist statement, because I think it's so timely, if I may.
Of course.
My title is Projecting the Notion That Our Present World Status is Dire. The title, which was We Could All Be Eating Lobster on the Titanic. The title is attributed to Darren Walker, CEO of the Ford Foundation. My emotions ran high with happenings across the US spring 2020. Scraps from COVID mask making inspired this American flag parody. Also, my wish was to honor John Lewis as patriarch, Black Lives Matter, and so many related deaths. Blue and white strips are giving respect to the noble police and first responders in global warming. My concern for our nation is unity and dispelling all the rancor and discord. As citizens, we need to vote, show care for each other, and offer our best efforts for our country and our world. This can only happen when truth prevails. I think art, when it has something to do with what's going on and tries to make the world a better place, has a really special place in my heart.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you for reading that artist's statement about the piece also. Thank you. Okay, we'll head over to you, Valerie. Were there any works that particularly stood out in your mind that did not make it into the exhibition?
Well, there's a piece by Judy Kirpick. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I think she had 3 entries: Indigo Composition 7, 8, and 9. And I was particularly drawn. I was drawn to all of them, but for some reason, number 9 stood out for me. And too bad we can't see it. It was bold but subtle at the same time, which kind of is an interesting combination of characteristics. And so what I really appreciated about it is that she really dug down and she explored what the material can do and what the process can do. And at the same time, she created a very strong composition. And so that was one of the ones that that stayed with me. Okay.
Great. Valerie, she was one. I have a list. She was one of the ones I really liked also. And I liked them all, but I had chosen number 10.
Number 10. Okay.
Yeah. I also liked the fact that she had a tailoring background, and I thought some of the work reminded me of it. Just referred in a sense to the tailoring. That number 10 especially sort of looked like a pattern, that fabric that was laid out to be sewn, I thought.
I saw her work at Quilt National last week.
I would love
and so I especially appreciated it, seeing it in person.
Yeah, I'd like to see her surface.
It's very textural, but it's very bold. It's very subtle. I already said that, but I'm just really in love with this series that she's been exploring.
Okay, great. Thank you, Valerie. And through our jurors and our audience, I apologize that I did not get with the jurors and ask them which works they were going to discuss of the ones that weren't accepted, because I could have pulled those images together and had those for us to look at. So I will definitely make sure to do that next time we do this. So sorry about that, everyone.
No problem.
And of course, if there's, in our audience, if there's any works that Denise and Valerie and Dan are discussing among the works that did not make it into the exhibition, feel free to send us an email just to info@carnegiecenter.org, and I could absolutely pull those out of the jurying system and send them to you. I'd be glad to do that. Okay. All right, so we'll move over to Dan. So Dan, were there any particular works that stood out in your mind that did not make it into the exhibition this year?
Okay, I can't cite any particular ones, but in response to what has been said, everything's too computerized nowadays. We just voted twice via the computer, and if we had really met together as jurors, and I had heard the descriptions by Denise and Valerie, I would have probably seen more in these pieces than I did, and the votes might have been changed. I think part of the problem was limiting the show to, I think you said 23 works. If I look at the 23 works, they were all ones I voted for. So I felt, well, you did a good job, but now I'm not so sure that there could have been a couple of replacements that might have been better.
Okay.
Good point, Dan.
Yes, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. And as Dan said, the system we use for the online jurying is called callforentry.org. And it's basically kind of well, I don't know if clearinghouse is the right word. It is a resource for calls for entry, for artists. So, so there are many calls for entry for many different exhibitions, that artists can create an account on Cafe, as it's known, and, and access these different calls for entry. So, so as a platform, I think it's very useful. And of course, especially, during COVID, when, we could not have been together during the jurying process anyways, it was useful. But of course, we have used this in previous years, pre-COVID. So, so I'm making a special note of what our jurors have said about not doing it face to face. Now, of course, we're spread out geographically, so that's another, benefit to doing the jurying online. But of course, I realize, as Dan mentioned, the jurors aren't able to, to talk together, in a room about what they're looking at. And so I'm definitely going to keep that in mind, and I really appreciate those comments. Now, we do have a question in the chat from Holly Cole, who is one of our accepted artists this year, and I will, after I read her question, I will flip to her work in the PowerPoint, and then at the end I'll go through all the PowerPoints, and I'll also point out, I'll go through all of the accepted works, and I'll point out our award winners as well. So Holly says, for our jurors, when you are looking at 3 entries by someone, what do you look for in similarities or differences in their works? So whoever wishes to answer, please go ahead. We don't necessarily have to go in the same order. So I'll throw that out to our jurors, and then I will.
I guess what I would say is, when you submit that many works into a show, for me, this is just my opinion, it's really important that those works feel like they're having a conversation with each other. that they're not, that they show that you have a clear, consistent point of view. And so then when you're looking at them, you're not trying to make a decision between apples and oranges. You're just trying to pick the best apple or the best orange. And so, and it's really hard sometimes when someone has three works that are really strong and they're very similar. And I just have to keep flipping through all of them and then reading what they said about them. And by and large, my gut feeling tells me, after going through that process, which one I feel I'd like to select.
Okay, great. Thank you, Valerie. Denise or Dan, either of you have anything to add to Holly's question? Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I sort of feel the same way as Valerie, actually. You just go back and forth. And maybe if I come back another day, I might pick a different one.
Right.
Yeah, I think it's really kind of amazing what ends up being in a show.
Okay. Yeah, for me, if it's often a gut feeling, sometimes if I'm familiar with the artist's work, I try to see where they're extending themselves, where they might be edging into new work. And so I would pick that to try to help their progression or development. Well, that's it.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, Denise and Valerie and Dan. All right, so we have one more question. And then again, we can certainly open up to general questions. Like I said, I will scroll through the accepted works and also point out our award winners. Okay, for our jurors. So what are some general tips you would offer for artists interested in submitting their work for next year's Form Not Function?
Should I start again? Well, what I had written down, what we've just been talking about, I sort of wondered if maybe some of these works would have gotten in if maybe each one of us might have voted for a different one of the same artist, and perhaps maybe not entering three pieces, or perhaps only entering pieces that aren't quite so similar. That's a thought. I don't know. And then the other thing is, I noticed there were a few pieces that were very small that perhaps if they had been entered as one piece would have made a much greater impact. That was just sort of some ideas I had.
All right, thank you. That's an interesting thought about the smaller pieces instead of being three individual entries or however many, make it one piece that is several parts. Okay, that's very interesting.
To answer in more general terms, a number of the pieces that weren't selected to me looked familiar and similar to many works I've seen. So I think an artist in general should try to find her or his own voice and experiment and try to be different. And as you build up a body of work, then acceptances may come then.
I mean, the thing I would have to say is just really general. It's probably something everybody knows, but the photography is really, really important. And so there were a few that were lacking in terms of the photography. So, really hire somebody who knows what they're doing or learn to photograph your work better. Sometimes if you're submitting more than one piece, if you have control, if you want to kind of tell the story of where you are at your point in your career as an artist, if you could control the order of the entry. I know sometimes the curator has more control over that, but sometimes the order of the way you see things might have an impact in terms of how the juror might see the work.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for those comments, Valerie. Okay, so I am going to go back to the beginning of our accepted works and just run through. So we already talked a little bit about Mary Alexander. This is growth number 3. This was one of our honorable mentions. Next, we have Linda Anderson. Her work is titled Remembering, and this was the winner of the Award of Excellence presented by Schmidt Furniture, which is a local furniture store here in New Albany, Indiana, who is celebrating their 75th anniversary and have always been a supporter of one of the larger awards for the Form Not Function exhibition. All right, so we have Margaret Black, Curb Appeal 20. Emily Bellinger, Crybaby. And you'll note this piece does have a piece that that is on the floor. So we've had, you know, to remind folks that yes, that is supposed to be there. I mean, no one's picked it up, but we've had a couple of kind of interested looks like, is this part of the, you know, did you lose this? Like, no, that's part of the work. All right, and then Peggy Brown, Clouds. Betty Busby, Echo. Shin-Hee Chen, The Evening Hour of a Hermit. And then Holly Cole, Come and Go. Sue Cortez or Cortez, I apologize if I have mispronounced. I believe Sue is with us on our talk today. Her piece, Kumotu Relationship, which did receive the Award of Excellence, presented by the Louisville Area Fiber and Textile Artists. Okay, Jane Gaskins, we did talk about her work. Carrie Green, Jane Gaskins, Sensory Perceptions. Carrie Green, Graded Discourse, and this piece received the Award of Excellence presented by the River City Fiber Artists. And just a quick thank you to the River City Fiber Artists who were with us from the beginning for the Form Not Function exhibition. They came to us with the idea to hold an annual juried exhibit at the Carnegie Center for Art and History. So thank you again to the River City Fiber Artists. I believe Marty Plager may be on our call, on our Zoom event today, but we do want to thank them so much for their support of this exhibition and for being there from the very beginning and of course bringing the idea to us. All right, moving on. Deborah Hyde, Monkeys in My Hair, parentheses, Evie. Deborah Custer, Strengthened. Pamela Mick, Riders on the Storm. Sorry, Elizabeth Morissette, Beak Mask. We did talk about this piece earlier. Clara Narty, The Gillet, I believe, Skyscraper.
I think it's gel.
Gel. Okay, thank you. I apologize, Clara, if you're on this call, and thank you, Valerie, because like I said, I had carefully written down the pronunciation when we were doing the awards at the opening, and I have since misplaced my pronunciation. So thank you, Valerie. But this piece did receive the award for creative use of stitching presented by the Southern Indiana Quilt Guild. Okay, moving on. Bobby Nolan, Flyover 10, Dancing in the Rainbow Mountains. I believe Bobby is with us on our event today. I saw her name. Fabienne Peter Contest, Glacier Series 3. Oh, sorry about that. Darren Redman, Feel Like Dancing. We did talk about this piece a bit earlier. Denise Roberts, My Tote number 12. And I did see Denise was on our event today. And then Karen Schultz, Objects in This Mirror. And this was our Sue Ellen Wilkinson Best in Show Award winner. And Sue Ellen was a former co-worker here at the Carnegie Center. And after her passing, we did rename our Best in Show Award to honor our friend. Okay, Rebecca Siemering, and I hope I pronounced that correctly. America, parentheses, electric. And then Lee Sproul, again, hope I pronounced that correctly. Archelinia. And that brings us to the end of our accepted works. Now, I do see we have some questions in the chat, so I will read those out loud. I am going to leave up the PDF of the works in case we have some additional questions. That way I can flip to them. All right, let's see. So, okay. All right, so, Ms. Elmer Lucille said specification for photos should be 5x7, 300 DPI. Okay, I will write that down for the call for entry for next year. Okay, 5x7, 300 DPI. Okay, and then let's see. Okay, this is a question from my coworker, Delisha. Although this is a blind jurying, do you know some of the artists, and is it hard to be unbiased? So we'll ask our jurors to share their thoughts, please.
Well, as the only local person, I knew some of the artists, but I didn't actually know when I was judging that they were their pieces. So I try not to let, knowing who, and some of the quilters, I'd seen their work before. I try not to let that have anything to do with what my judging. But I was surprised, and pleasantly to see later, who the people that I knew who had entered and how lovely their work was actually.
Gotcha. And I guess another kind of follow-up question, for all three of you is, if there are, since you are all artists yourself, that you may have, encountered certain artists' work enough over the years that you can recognize their work, without necessarily knowing, the name of the artist. Like I know, we've had this exhibition for 17 years here. And of course, I know I agree with Delisha, there are, certain artists that we have become so familiar with that we can, often recognize their kind of body of work. So I'll add that onto Delisha's question. So Valerie or Dan, if you have any other thoughts you would like to share.
Well, I would say the work is the work, and if it's good, it's good. And I like to think I have certain ethical standards, and that I wouldn't pick work just because it's done by somebody that I know.
Of course, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, and we
I agree.
absolutely understand and would expect that of our jurors and your talent and expertise. Absolutely.
I agree with Valerie, but and I don't personally know any of the artists, but a number of the artists have exhibited here in San Diego at the Visions Art Museum, so I've seen their work in person, and so we know, say, the quality of their quilting, and it's something to see a work in person rather than in a photo. So that may affect our views. But I don't think that affected my consideration.
Mm-hmm. Okay, thank you. Well, we're getting close to 1 o'clock, but I did want to ask our jurors, Denise and Valerie and Dan. So if it was, obviously not during a pandemic, would that be something you would have considered, to jury together in person? Now, of course, we can't really get 358 works, here in person, but, if we could get you all together, jury together and, and cover your travel expenses, is that something that would be helpful?
I mean, I've done that before, and it's really great when you're in the room with the other jurors and it's up on the wall and it's big.
Yeah.
And you can just have a back and forth about it. I think that's really valuable.
Okay.
Yes, I'm sure it would have maybe changed my view on a couple of the submissions by hearing from the other jurors.
Okay, great. Thank you.
I agree. And I wonder if we couldn't get together, if just maybe meeting together on a Zoom meeting, where we could at least discuss things, might have helped.
Right. Okay. Yeah.
It's possible to get together physically.
Okay. Thank you.
Just wanted to share that the discussions are super helpful. This is the second Form Not Function show that I've ever seen, so it's all brand new to me. I'm actually in the Sally Newkirk gallery showcasing, I'm doing a residency, and I have yet to do the quilt walk yet. And it's been up for a month, and I've been holding out because I have no idea what I'm looking at. I attempted to make a quilt. I've been following Valerie like a stalker crazy person. Your imagery on Instagram is awesome, Valerie. Thank you for that.
Thank you.
Absolutely. I love how you're doing your content. But I've noticed that when people come into the show, when they come back to my residency space, I'm super excited to hear what they say about the quilts. And then I'll envision it, because I've had a peek at a few, but it kind of helps me to understand what to look for as a person who doesn't understand quilting. And I think that's a big conversation around art in general, is talking about it, because we have these educated views because we've done it or we've seen it or experienced it, but the new people coming in, it's very overwhelming. So, and even to come into this Zoom meeting and find out that you guys would like even more discussion about the quilts to properly judge is super exciting for me, because for me, it makes quilts a baseline of fun conversation and growing. I hear a lot of that. So I've been peeking again at the quilts. I still haven't seen them in person, but I'm taking a lot more to it when I do finally get to go look at them. So thank you all so much for that.
Great. Thank you, Styx. Thank you for your comment. And hi. Okay, do we have any other questions? Let me see. I don't think we have anything else in the chat. Do we have any other comments from our audience and any of our artists that are with us today?
I just say for everybody is just keep doing the work, just keep at it, keep trying to find your intent and your point of view. And this is a cliche I like to use, but I like to say, just have eyes that can see. Just absorb what's around you and take that with you and see how that can be useful to you as an artist.
Absolutely. Thank you for that, Valerie. Okay, well, any other comments, questions? Oh, that's nice. Oh, Sue, one of our artists, Sue Cortez, again, apologies. And she had her piece, Kumo 2 relationship with one of our award winners. Sue says, I would like to thank the jurors. So absolutely, yes. And I would too. Thank you so much to Denise, Furnish, and Valerie Goodwin, and Dan Olfie for taking the time to be with us today and taking the time to prepare for today's talk and to share your time and talent, expertise. And thank you again for doing that to serve as our jurors. I know that was a considerable task, and I know the callforentry.org system has its, shall we say, quirks. And it's not always the best way to have a conversation about the works and what is accepted. So I have made notes on all of your comments for next year. Let's see. Okay, so Peggy Black, another of our artists. Thank you for a great show and talk. And then Linda Anderson, I joined late. I hope to do the recording. So yes, I will mention, if I didn't at the beginning, that today's presentation has been recorded. And so it will be posted on the Carnegie Center's YouTube channel within several days of this live program. So you can just go to YouTube, search for the Carnegie Center for Art and History, and the recording will be there within the next few days. All right, let me read the rest of the chat. Let's see, Denise Roberts, one of our artists. Thank you, everyone. Pamela Mick, another artist. Thank you for this opportunity, my first entry. Great, thank you, Pamela. Karen Schultz, another artist. Thank you to the jurors and all involved in making this exhibition possible. Yes, thank you so much, Karen. We appreciate that. Ms. Elmer Lucille, thanks. I enjoyed the jurors stating what they liked and did not like. And again, that's Ms. Elmer Lucille Allen, who is an artist, a fiber artist and ceramicist here in Louisville, Kentucky. All right, Karen Clayton, St. James, sorry, it trails off. So I think it says Karen Clayton, St. James, says thank you. So, okay, well, I believe that takes us to the end of our presentation. So thank you again to Valerie Goodwin and Denise Furnish and Dan Olfie. Thank you again for being with us today. Thank you again so much to all of our Form Not Function artists that joined us today. Thank you for your entries this year. The exhibition is on view through July 17th of this year. And of course, again, I saw some of you, had the pleasure of meeting some of you at the opening reception on May 14th. And hopefully we'll get to see some more of you before July 17th, in person here at the Carnegie Center. So thank you all so much. Our next Lunch and Learn program is on July 13th. We'll be joined by Devin McElraith from the Wisconsin Museum of Quilt and Fiber Art. She is going to be speaking about their quarantine quilt project. So that will be on July 13th at 12 p.m. EDT. And you can sign up for that on our website, carnegiecenter.org. So thank you so much, everyone, again, our jurors and our audience. And we will see you another time soon. Thank you.
So long.
Uh,
Thank you.